Hello, everybody. It's me, Kenneth, and I am here with Scott Mandelker. Scott is a man of many interests, and as with the guests on my show, they always have many interests. But Scott is, first of all, he has a Ph.D. in East-West psychology, a BA in Buddhist Studies, and an MA in counseling. He is the author of three books from elsewhere, being E.T. in America, Universal Vision, Soul Evolution and Cosmic Plan, and the third book of his is a compilation of his selected essays. Now, Scott is a student of the Law of One. He also teaches from the Law of One, and he combines this with his extensive experience in the Eastern traditions of Buddhism, Taoism, and Advaita as well. So, Scott, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ken.
Scott, let's, obviously with so much that you know, let's kind of hone the topic down a little bit in this interview. And what I really like to talk to you about is the Law of One. And I'm first of all, I'm very attracted to you in terms of your teachings, because you talk about the Eastern traditions and the ET stuff together, and you manage to tie them both together, and that's something that I haven't seen done with a lot of teachers, obviously, because people talk about ETs, don't talk about the spiritual stuff, the non-dual stuff. People talk about the non-dual stuff, don't talk about the ET stuff at all.
Yep.
And I actually got a lot out of your interview on YouTube, where you said that a lot of the ancient traditions were actually had origins in extraterrestrial origins, so to speak. The ancient traditions that we know these days, like the Hindu religion, the Buddhist religion, you suspect or you think that they may have ET origins. Is that?
Not quite.
Okay.
I mean, I would never say that Buddhism and the primary teachings of Gautama Buddha came from ET transmission.
Mm-hmm.
In the history of Hinduism, some yogis were certainly overshadowed by teachers that provided them with some information.
Yep.
In Taoism, also, I wouldn't say that there's any direct ET transmission of information.
Yeah.
But, in line with a timeline of ET Earth contact,
yeah,
that Ra gave in the 4 volumes of the Law of One series. Clearly, there is both positive and negative extraterrestrial intervention operating through the entirety of human history from the beginning of what is considered Lemuria, or 60, 75,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's discussion of direct intervention in Egypt at the time of Akhenaten, and in South America, some of the earlier traditions and lost cities being related to sun worship that in the beginning was benevolent, was monotheism, not negative.
Do you want to just zoom out a little bit and talk about cycles? I think that's a good place to start, because and I suppose why I said that as well is the time frame of reference, right? If you look at the ancient traditions, it's been, say, maximum 5,000, 6,000 years. But if we talk about what the stuff coming out from the Law of One, we're talking about like 75,000 years. So just to put it in context, the Law of One material is coming from a much broader perspective.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, go.
It's okay. In terms of focusing the discussion in the historical, within historical parameters, in the teachings of the Law of One or the raw material, they're claiming that they are a 6th-density extraterrestrial group that would be considered about 2 billion years older in development of consciousness than standard awareness or consciousness of Earth humanity. So Earth humanity is designated as a race of primarily third density or third chakra achieved souls, one step up from the animals, but not yet in the realms where there's no confusion. And so they talk about the law of free will as the law of confusion, very deep principle, which explains why positive beings don't just come down and give us the keys to the kingdom, because there's a certain respect for our own process of moving out of confusion. But then the timeline basically says that the beginning of third density soul evolution on planet Earth began 75,000 years ago with direct transfer of beings from Mars, that there was a third density human level civilization that had existed a long time on planet Mars, and that they blew off their atmosphere and destroyed their infrastructure, and that the bulk of the souls were then transferred to Earth by interplanetary reincarnation. So the timeline starts about 75,000 years ago, and their view is that there are the 75,000 years in that view is the master cycle of 3D evolution in the galaxy. Yep. Souls that are out of the animal and plant kingdom in the human level of self-consciousness have 75,000 years divided into 3 cycles of 25,000 years, which correlate exactly with the equinox, the precession of the equinox, the rotation or movement around the 12 constellations.
Yep.
And after 3 of those major cycles, becoming total 75,000 years, then there is the beginning of the next dimensional, a higher dimensional cycle on such a planet. And so the meaning of the present time on Earth is that we're ending the 3D cycle and beginning the fourth dimensional civilization on planet Earth, which has never happened before on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Now, so their view is then that there's been persistent positive and negative ET contact with humans from the beginning, 75,000 years ago, and that it's intensified in the last 5,000 years. So the contact with Akhenaten in Egypt is about 3,500 years ago, and that was the major intervention of Ra as representative of a confederation of benevolent planets and groups in the last 10,000 years. But that there was contact in Atlantis and before that too.
Okay, so Scott, you've talked about contact, and a lot of people listening are going to ask, how do you know there's contact? How would you answer that?
Well, how do you know you're not dreaming right now? You don't know, actually. Your senses give you some information. How do you know that's reliable? You don't know. So, it gets back to questions of epistemology and how do we know what we believe we do know. Now, there is a difference between psychosis and paranormal experience. And so there's a Sufi saying that the enlightened man or being, the adept, swims in the same waters in which the crazy man drowns. And these are considered waters of multidimensional awareness and emptiness of the sense of separation, unity, multidimensional, beyond, awareness of life that's beyond the visible. How do we know that's true? There's no proof. And even in the raw material, they address that whole issue, and they say, we only offer truth without proof. And so, how do you know? You don't know. But all I would say is that truth and authentic, non-delusional paranormal experience has a certain quality. It has a certain feel and taste and sense that's left on the mind. It's the same idea. How do you know the difference between a dream and an authentic out-of-body experience in which consciousness inhabits a finer body and is considered then on a non-physical dimension? How do you know? Was it my dream, imagination, or was it simply, or was it an authentic remembrance of an out-of-body experience? you don't know, except that both either type of experience leaves a different effect on the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only a very quiet, sensitive mind that can know that.
Right.
And so I would never say, I'm offering absolute truth, but I would say if you really are sensitive to inner knowing, you will recognize that paranormal, multidimensional experience has a different feeling than imagination or delusion.
Mm. So I guess your advice would be, I mean, obviously most of the people listening to this would be able to understand you in what you're saying. So I guess your advice would be trust your experience and assume you're not going crazy.
No, I wouldn't. Well, the real crazy is a person who doesn't know they're crazy. So the real insanity is a condition of believing one is perfectly sane while in many ways becoming dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain parameters that are observed with a healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy, whatever that means,
Yep.
meaning not insane. And that's, the capacity for authentic relationship, the capacity for critical thought, the capacity for logical analysis and recognizing when there's consistency and non-consistency in belief system, belief patterns. So when those things are not present, then there's more evidence for a form of psychosis. But again, it's a very subtle matter. And I would just say, look within. If you've had some powerful experience that you wonder is genuine, paranormal, or my imagination, or my crazy thought, I would say be quiet and look within and feel and get a sense of, is this a fantasy that I want? Does this have the coloration of something that I really want, that I've embellished, that I'm embellishing because of my desire for a certain experience? Or does it really seem actually objective and in a way impersonal? The impersonal, like you and I are talking now.
Yep.
There's a certain impersonality to it where I can't imagine I'm really making it all up.
Yep. Do you want to talk a little bit about, I guess, Eric von Daniken's work with Chariot of the Gods? I guess that's where I was steering this conversation towards. Do you want to talk about, the Nazca lines? I mean, in terms of evidence, if people want to go and, investigate that, do you think that's a good route for looking at the ET phenomena?
Well, I personally have not had that much interest in researching the facts and figures of historical evidence so as to prove something to myself. Maybe a bit of introduction to me would be appropriate, since I don't know if any of your listeners really know who I am or where I'm coming from.
Not really.
No. So perhaps that would be best at this point, or if you don't mind, I'd like to do that.
Go for it.
So my initial impetus for seeking spirituality was basically suffering, which is very traditional Buddhist. And living in New York City in the 1970s, I perceived a lot of negativity. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel I belonged. I also found great insincerity and non-authenticity in the leaders, religious leaders, and social and political, and the university and school, not university, school and high school, and what I was in contact with. So I didn't feel that I fit into this world, stranger in a strange land. Now, sure, indeed, no doubt, one can find psychological issues there. But like alienation or adjustment disorder, people can say. Now, of course, a hard-line psychiatrist may say that any out-of-body experience is any sense that there's an out-of-body is psychosis, Any sense of no self is depersonalization or a dissociative process. Any difficulty in society represents some kind of developmental failure in one growing up. So, there's a whole host and a raft of psychopathological explanations or explanations of psychopathology used to explain and actually wash away any belief in an experience of the reality of multidimensional life beyond the physical five senses. So they can't prove that paranormal experience is psychopathology, and I couldn't prove that it's a genuine objective experience.
Do you think that paradigm is intentional, as in is it constructed to keep us in that box?
Well, I think that, there is a politics of ideology. There's a politics of belief systems purported to be reality by those in positions of institutional power, whether educational or media, academic in the universities, the journals, the news reporting, and the politicians and the government and all of that, and the religions, of course. So religion has a monopoly on spiritual paradigm, and the psychologists or psychology, psychiatry, medicine, Western medicine, seeks to give itself a monopoly on the definition of personal health, mental health. And so there's a very glaringly powerful politics behind all of that, and very much influences what is allowed to be said or what would be entertained and what isn't. So like J. Alfred or Arnold Hynek, a very famous physicist, University of Chicago or Chicago, J. Allen Hynek, big time UFO researcher, basically was a total skeptic of UFOs and ET and all of that. After research, he came to the conclusion it was real, and he was completely ostracized by the academic institutions and the so-called objective scientists. So for me, at a young age in high school, I had serious doubts about the credibility of human beings. And I also had a great suffering associated with that. And, whatever personal issues and being a teenager in New York City in the 70s, So, but as fate would have it, I encountered Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism in high school. So I began reading on my own. In college at 18, I signed up for a course in Buddhist meditation, ended up learning Vipassana, Anapanasati, breath, mindfulness practice. I've been doing that ever since. Ended up dropping out of college, living in monasteries in the US, Thai Theravadan, Korean Zen, Japanese Zen, and I went and lived in Thailand and India for a few months. And threw myself into Vipassana mindfulness practice as a way of getting rid of my suffering. And of course, in meditation, you have to sit and face the mind, face the elements of self. And generally, one has to face all that one doesn't want to face, because that's what's been avoided, and that's what's still stuck down there. So then I went into even more suffering, but after years of deep practice, something broke, something changed, there was transformation, and then I went back to college and ended up getting a BA in Buddhist Studies and Psychology from Naropa Institute, which was started by a Tibetan Buddhist Rinpoche, Chogyam Trungpa, and that was in the 1980s. Meanwhile, I began having out-of-body experiences in which I actually met my ET, extraterrestrial, higher dimensional soul family. I met my group, and it wasn't anything with grays and no abduction and nothing scary and no laboratory and no promises that you're the chosen one and no demands and no special privileged information that only I can bring to save the world. No, nothing like that. Just profound, profound experience of being loved and understood far, far better than I understand myself. It was a clear out of body, and I had many, but the one that was pivotal, basically there were two things. First of all, there was a wave of tangible love, and I was weeping in joy. And then there was the sense that they know me far more than I know myself, and that I know myself as a tiny, my understanding of myself was a tiny fraction of what I am. Now that doesn't make me feel like I'm a special guy. It didn't make me feel that I had a great mission. It simply confirmed to me why I felt as a stranger in a strange land on planet Earth. And it also reinforced my understanding of Buddhism and the Law of One, which I was reading at that time, which are talking about positive and negative extraterrestrials and higher dimensions and wanderers coming from other planets and solar systems, other dimensions, and the experience of being on a planet which doesn't know love. This is a planet of the purpose of third density is to learn the ways of love. Earth is a school for souls who've not yet learned to love. The reason that we have so many problems is because people are not have not confirmed their commitment to benevolence and morality. Morality.
Scott, do you just want to briefly talk about the chakra system and the densities? Because we've made references to the densities, but I'm afraid people are getting lost because they don't understand the chakra system and how it relates to evolution.
Okay, well, it's a big issue because the idea is that the intrinsic structure of light is a septonate. The intrinsic vibratory ratios of what we call light is naturally divided into the 7 colors of the rainbow. Light goes into a prism, comes out as 7. The rainbow in the sky is the same colors attributed to a traditional Hindu and Western metaphysical understanding of the 7 chakra colors, from root, which could be called first chakra, base of the spine, to crown, top of the head. That 7-fold system of energy centers is deep in Hindu, Hindu teaching, Hindu spiritual teaching, predating the Buddha. And in Buddhism, the chakras are not important, but in Hinduism and Taoism, they certainly are. In the teaching of the Law of One, they're also considered important for many reasons. One of which is that septonate of 7 vibratory levels and colors is associated with 7 states of consciousness, which is associated with the 7-dimensional schema of each solar system, which is far more than the visible planets and sun, of course. The solar system is considered a spherical, kind of 7-dimensional sort of spherical octave. The octave is basically a unified energy field in which there exist 7 primary dimensions. On planet Earth, we see first, second, third dimensional life, which is understood as elemental, first, mineral, plant, animal, second, human, third. And the meaning of the present time on Earth is that planet Earth, schoolhouse Earth, for those who've not yet learned to love, is becoming a school for those who already embrace virtue, love, and benevolence. So the idea is that if you understand the 7 chakras, which are states of consciousness, energetic points of energy, and nexi of energy points associated with particular qualities of consciousness. Nexi of energy points associated with particular qualities of consciousness.
Yep.
Now, if you understand all those 7, you will also understand the 7-dimensional system and the 7 energy bodies, which is a whole other story. Planets also have energy bodies, and those are called the electromagnetic fields that science hardly understands, surrounding and interpenetrating the rock body of planet Earth. So the idea is that Earth is now activating its fourth body associated with fourth chakra, associated with heart and love and compassion. And that's why all teachings of the New Age that are true are associated with development of love and compassion, which begins with self-love, which is what so many spiritual teachings are about. Love yourself, forgive yourself, move into heart chakra consciousness. And that's because the planet is moving into fourth dimension. And so the Law of One, or the raw material, presents a very detailed schema of the qualities of consciousness associated with the seven chakras, which are also ways of understanding our own personal evolution. In that, primarily second and third chakra energy blockages are associated with neurosis and psychosis and emotional conflicts and psychopathology. Psychopathology is the result of second, third chakra blockages in that system. And the way of healing is the way of releasing or dissolving second, third chakra energy blockages. That is called therapy. That's called healing. That's called developing a positive self-image, developing consistency in your beliefs and your actions, moving through old trauma and pain, and moving into love and wisdom. And that's the salvation for psychopathology, is the development of love and wisdom in self-honesty, in honesty and being, genuine with oneself, in kindness, kindly being honest with oneself. And that is development of fourth and fifth chakra, which just so happens to be heart and throat, or love, wisdom. And in Buddhism, as you hear the Dalai Lama and others say, the key is wisdom and compassion. Wisdom and compassion. So Ra says, know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. Know yourself, fifth chakra. Accept yourself, fourth chakra. Become the creator, sixth chakra. So the salvation of dysfunctional psychopathology and human suffering is development of love, wisdom, and unity, consciousness, which is true balance and includes forgiveness.
Yeah, okay, wow, great. I'm so glad you mentioned forgiveness, because I guess a lot of listeners would be listening based on my previous work with A Course in Miracles. And, there's a big dynamic there of the ego, and, forgiveness as a tool of seeing other people as oneself, and thus accepting others unconditionally. Do you want to talk about that as it relates to this evolutionary path?
Okay, so let me break it down. First of all, you used the word ego.
Yeah.
Then you spoke about the importance of forgiveness as a form of seeing others as oneself. And then you spoke about the mechanics of unconditional acceptance. Now,
Sorry, I live in the ghetto.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so according to the view of the raw material, which is actually the same in this count as the Buddhist teaching of no self, according to Ra, the term ego is a concept which is unworkable, and understanding cannot come from it. In the understanding of true nature in Buddhism, there's a recognition of no self, anatta. Anatta. Anatta means no atta, no atman. In this case, it really means the sense of separate self is an illusion. There is body, there is mind, there is a karmic stream of thought and feeling and belief and tendency, but that is not a self. That is a karmic stream associated with a body, mind, spirit, energy system, which is what we call ourselves. So Ra says body, mind, spirit, or mind, body, spirit complex, not a person, and surely not ego. And so you say the closest they can find in the body, mind, spirit complex to what we call ego is third chakra blockage. Third chakra blockage is associated with a conflict in the relationship between self and others, and self and group and society. Conflict in relationship is very much associated with conflicts related to the sense of self. And that's what they're saying is an ego. The only thing that they can see in us that resembles what we're calling ego is third chakra blockage associated with low self-valuation and conflict in true relationship as to how to make true relationship, which is love and wisdom. And so personally, I myself never use the word ego, and I know there isn't such a thing. So I mean, I've sat in meditation and I've seen that self is a thought. In the early days, I could see that self is a thought. Doesn't mean there aren't tendencies. Doesn't mean I have no blockages. It just means that the experience of a separated selfhood is based on limited perception and doesn't actually pertain to the reality of what we are.
Right, it's a construct.
It's a construct, just as Ra said. It's a concept. And they said understanding, which is the quality of heart chakra activation. And that's a little seed principle. Development of understanding is the development of heart chakra. Love and understanding go together. And it's not native to the third density mind, meaning we need to do work to develop understanding. Ra even said, understanding is not of your density. Understanding is not of your density, meaning it's not native to the mind we're using in the body we have that we have full understanding of anything. Number one. So I discard the use of the word ego, and I know it's a fantasy. So, and Ra, it's in line with Buddhism and Ra, and that's good enough for me too, and my own experience. So then, the development of forgiveness is, in my view, personally, I've done counseling for 20 years with people. I have an MA in counseling and Ph.D. in East-West psychology. From my experience with people and my understanding of the Seven Chakra System, true forgiveness is actually only possible with a very significant development of unconditional acceptance, love, and clarity, discernment, understanding, wisdom. So this is associated with sixth chakra. Sixth chakra, third eye, the brow chakra, ajna center, the center of the forehead, is associated with experience of oneness and peace and true spiritual empowerment and forgiveness. And so forgiveness requires not only unconditional acceptance, as you say. Unconditional acceptance is a quality of fourth ray, fourth chakra. But also a somewhat deep understanding that realizes mutual responsibility. That even though you said those things that I found hurtful, or you lied or broke your promises, which means, that's not virtuous action, sure, I agreed to be in relationship with you. If something happens to us, it's co-created. Even if it's the responsibility of the other that is the primary initiator of the situation. Even if they initiate and do some action which is not virtuous, and we feel so hurt, we have already chosen to be there with them. If it's not related to you, it won't be in your life. If it's in your life, it's co-created by you.
Right.
And so I don't think forgiveness is that easy. I don't think people should bandy about the term forgiveness whatsoever. Forgiveness is a great achievement, and forgiveness takes not only unconditional acceptance of my pain, my feelings, your feelings, and all the dynamics, but a clear understanding of how this all came to be. How did it come to be that you did that, or they did that, or didn't do that, or whatever it is? How did it come to be that I am here with you? How did it come to be that I chose this? What could I be learning from it? How did I co-create it? What is the value? What can I learn here? How can I grow here? Now, all of that being considered, then I think we can talk about forgiveness. But being a sixth density affair, forgiveness, in my view, it is very much associated with seeing other as oneself, meaning an awareness of one, a oneness. And in the raw material, they don't use the word other, ever. They use the term other self. Imlakesh, I am another you. Same as the Mayan. So Im Lakesh means I am another you. And that is the same as saying there's self and other self, because there's only the one self or the one life that is identity. And that's the law of one. And that's realized in sixth chakra. But that doesn't happen in a stable way until well-developed love acceptance and wisdom understanding. So that's very simple. It's very straightforward. The way to six is through 4 and 5. None come to the Father but through the Christ principle, which is really love wisdom. And that's the essence of higher self, or our true being, which is not a self, all self, because it's an awareness, it's a focalization of love, wisdom, consciousness of one, without a sense of separation from all that is. But that's not the end of the way, and what we call Buddha is actually considered one step above higher self, which is the same as Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva in Buddhism is the perfect blend of love wisdom, which leads to peace and forgiveness and true empowerment and balance. And that's a great achievement. So I think forgiveness is where it's at for sure, but it's the distillate of a long series of inner workings, seeking to accept fully, seeking to know more deeply.
Now, I wanted to ask you as well about unity consciousness, because certainly what we're talking about here is that unity consciousness only really occurs at 6 density, and it could be my misperception, but in New Age circles, it's often talked about Earth moving to a 4th dimension or 4th density, and that's unity consciousness. So I guess what would you say on that?
Well, love consciousness is dualistic. There's me, there's you, and there's the experience of love-based relation. That's called duality. That's the awareness of self and other self, or self and other, actually. And so that experience of me and you and the quality of the relationship based on love and acceptance is wholly, thoroughly, totally dualistic. And unity consciousness is not. Ne? That's Japanese. So, yeah, it's very clear to me. I mean, love is dualistic. However, love is the gateway to the experience of unity. There's no true experience of unity without unconditional, vast and wide and far-reaching unconditional acceptance.
Yes.
Unconditional acceptance of our shadow, unconditional acceptance of evil on earth, of what we call injustice, of terrible suffering, of grotesque and horrible human mind and human activity and behavior on planet Earth, and unconditional acceptance of the one infinite creation, which allows all that to be. Why? A lot of humans have had the problem with the issue of a benevolent God or creator and the presence of evil and injustice. Of course, they don't realize multi-incarnational soul evolution. They don't realize that there is multi-incarnational karma, meaning incarnation. Right? There really is reincarnation, and there really is a karmic flow of cause and effect. And you plant a good seed, you get a good fruit. You plant a bad seed, you get a bad fruit. It's much more subtle than that. But not seeing beyond a single lifetime, we experience injustice. We believe we see injustice. Yes, indeed, there's a lot of suffering. But what I would say is, although you can say the infinite creator is infinite love, that infinite love operates by extremely highly impeccable respect for free will. That impeccable respect for free will is the exquisite subtlety and complexity of karma. And that's multi-incarnational, and that's even multi-dimensional. And so when we see suffering and injustice, the suffering is quite real, but the injustice is because we don't perceive the big picture, which is that these are beings who've had past lives, and they're eternal beings on a course of total development. And there's a lot more going on than one single incarnation.
Yeah. Now, my understanding of this concept of suffering from the law of one, and please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, is that it's a method of polarization, that it sort of accelerates the polarization of a mind-body complex, spirit complex, into either service to self or service to others in the third density. What would you say with this concept of suffering and the third density and the move to fourth?
Okay. So the evolutionary schema, again, that Ra offers is in line with a deeper reading of Hinduism and esoteric Buddhism, in which, particularly in Buddhism, there's a discussion of 6 realms, 6 worlds, or 6 levels of being. The top 2 are called the Devas and the Asuras. Deva, Sanskrit, meaning shining, radiant one, which is the same as positive ETs or the angelics. Then there's the Asuras, higher dimensional, jealous, fighting, angry gods, same as negative extraterrestrials. Hinduism has the same schema of the higher, so-called higher dimensions, polarity, cosmic polarity. The lower realms are hell, animals, and hungry ghosts, and then there's human in the middle. Now, in that view, from Ra, there's the idea that the purpose of third density is actually to make spiritual choice and go on one of the 2 paths called service to other, service to self. One is the positive, the common, normal, ordinary, positive spiritual path, which is service to other, based in love. It's also called the path of unity. So the values of that path are love and honesty and benefit for all. So it's not just service to others and forgetting oneself. It's love, wisdom as the basis for all decision and all choice. And then the purpose of third density is to make a clear choice. The other option is service to self, which Ra said only 10% of the souls that get out of 3D in the universe, which are, everywhere, going out of 3D, 10% go service to self, 90% go service to other. So that explains positive and negative ETs. That explains positive and negative ET contact and the different types, which are quite different. So to spur on, to intensify the spiritual seeking or inner seeking, is really a seeking of meaning and value. The seeking of meaning and value to one's life. What do I really feel is important? And what's the meaning of this? And what's really important for me? That determination leads to polarization. That polarization is a choice between the path of unity and the path of separation and control, positive and negative. Now, various forms of what Ra calls catalyst are then both programmed before birth as well as the result of choices during the life. These forms of catalyst include suffering, such as illness, sickness. Some people are born and they're sickly from day one, right? Sickly children who die young or live as, with a weak body all their life. That's one type of suffering catalyst chosen before birth, according to this view. Likewise, if you're born in Bosnia, Herzegovina, if you're born in a war zone, if you're born in certain conditions, you have either opportunity, which is harmonious, or you have hardship and challenge, which is disharmonious. Both are forms of catalyst. And so all life experience can be understood as catalyst. And the efficient use of catalyst, meaning making use of our life to learn and grow, requires reflection and inquiry, self-inquiry, and the determination of meaning and value. And so it's a moral issue, Do I really consider that the benefit of all is good for me? Or do I really feel that whatever it takes to get more power than others is best for me? That's positive or negative. So suffering is a primary or a major type of catalyst in 3D that can be used by souls to get themselves together and make a clear choice of their values and move on to one or the other path. Unfortunately, what's happened with this group of souls on planet Earth is that by non-loving decisions, which lead to non-loving action, which leads to harm, what's called negative karma or a karmic liability is established. That then requires some kind of karmic rebalancing, which is generally the simple rule, if you hurt others, hurt's coming on in at you. What you do to the world is what the world does to you. What you give out is what comes in. What goes around comes around. Create your own reality. The law of attraction, it's the secret, but not really a secret. It's the law of karma. Not a secret at all. The secret is that there's no secret. It was the law of karma understood 5,000 years ago, and understood in Atlantis, and understood in other worlds. It's called karma. But actually humans don't understand it. And so there's the sense of this suffering is unfair. It's unfair. I don't deserve this. Well, yes, you don't deserve it in some cases, right? I mean, I'm walking down the street and somebody runs over my toe. You can say you don't deserve it, but you're choosing to be walking down that street. Your responsibility is walking on the street. Maybe that's, doesn't seem like it deserves to have your toe run over, and it doesn't. It doesn't, right. However, there's a higher level of life that we don't see. And there's a purpose to life that's far more profound than what we're told by religion, and certainly by media or human, so-called leadership. So the significance of human life is far more than, make a good material life for yourself and your friends and your family, or get ahead, or get some stuff. I mean, the purpose of human life is the development of all we are. Ra said, the purpose of incarnation is the development of mind, body, spirit. So simple. The purpose of incarnation is the development or evolution of mind, body, spirit. So again, just to close that, in that bigger view of the significance of our incarnation and all the strange things that happen to us, some of which seem completely unfair, nevertheless, even if we didn't do anything, at some level we agreed to, at a higher level, we agreed to be here for it, and we agreed to participate, not because we deserve pain or suffering, in some cases. I mean, in some cases we do, because pain out is pain in. Abuse out is abuse coming in. What goes around comes around, but not in all cases. In the cases where it seems, what did I do? And even if there's nothing, it seems, of course, we don't see past lives, so we don't know anything anyway. But in the cases that seem quite obviously unfair, what is fair is that we're here for accelerated soul evolution. And all sorts of trouble and suffering can be used that way too.
Now, we haven't talked about the higher self and all this, and obviously with this concept of seemingly unjust things happening to you and people seeming to attack you. Personally, I always appeal to spirit or the higher self to help me with that. Do you want to just talk about the role of the higher self?
Well, the higher self is our true being. It's considered a being in its own right, like a master, that has projected a portion of its consciousness and life force into the vehicles of mind, body, spirit complex. So there's considered, in the theosophy of Alice Bailey, in Western metaphysics, which that system has some other problems, but regardless of that, they talk about two lines of contact between the incarnate self and what they call the monad. Monad actually is the same as higher self. There's the life stream and the consciousness stream. And one goes into the heart and one goes into the brain, whatever. But we are in many ways what in Tibetan Buddhism is called an emanation body. We are an emanation body of the bodhisattva of higher self, which is a being in its own right in 6th density, late 6D. It's actually 6.6 or so. So, meaning if we divide dimensions into 7 subplanes, it's very, very workable. So, higher self then knows the path back to itself. It knows the energy consciousness requirements for steady progression up through dimensional levels back to late six.
Mm.
And so the higher self has its own life and its own thing to do. But it, in my understanding, is sort of the oversoul primary teacher guide for the evolution of a soul, which is not the same, through time and space and multiple dimensions, one after another. Earth is in 3. We don't jump to 5. That's another New Age fallacy. We're moving into the next level, which is heart. Humans barely know love. You think they're going to move into 5th chakra? Wisdom? I don't think so. So higher self is really your being that lives at one with all. Your being that lives in peace. Your being that is replete with will. Your being that has great forgiveness available. It doesn't blame, so it's beyond that process. But it's the peace that comes from profound acceptance and profound understanding that is forgiveness. Forgiveness is an integration of profound acceptance and profound understanding. That is the mind of higher self. That is the condition of 6th chakra.
Would you say
it's developed by meditation, but that itself doesn't do the work of clearing the lower 2. That's a whole other story.
Yeah, well, Scott, I mean, okay, the higher self, would you say it exists right at the cusp of disappearing into the creator? That the higher self, in sense, still has an identity that it's still hanging on to in order to help the lower self.
Well, the higher self has its own life aside from helping the manifest mind-body-spirit complex. It's got its own gig, not simply waiting for us to call for assistance.
Right.
But the distinction between 6th and 7th density life or being is the distinction between 6th or 7th chakras. In the system that Ra gives, they talk about the law, L-A-W, the laws associated with each of the dimensional levels, which correlate to the chakras. So 6th dimension is the law of 1. Ra says they're in late 60, higher self is late 60, Bodhisattva is a higher self, and that's the law of 1, experience of 1. 1 is all is 1. Now, the next step up, if we say up, or bigger, or greater, is 7th density, which is called the law of forever. And Ra said at that level, the looking backwards is finished. The looking backwards is finished. There's no more interest or action of awareness of more separative consciousness at so-called lower dimensional levels. And so likewise in meditation, when there's authentic crown chakra activation, one is in bliss, totally wordless, bliss, mystery, the ineffable experience of fusion in totality, which is joyous, but has really nothing to say. And so it's actually the step beyond unity. And in Buddhism, there is no discussion of unity. The original teaching of Buddhism is not the same as Hinduism, talking about, God consciousness or unity, one with all. The Buddha basically didn't explain what nirvana, complete and perfect enlightenment is, but that it's the destruction of ignorance, and freedom from all suffering, and freedom from all becoming. No becoming. And that's akin to 7th density, which is the end of separative action for soul evolution. There's no more path. The path is over. And there's dissolution of one's essential being, which is the 6th density, the dissolution of that essential unified being into totality, into infinity. One becomes infinity.
So would you say at this level space-time no longer exists?
Oh yeah, space-time doesn't exist at the level of higher self. Space-time is a product of dualistic consciousness. There is no space-time for those who've transcended attachment to the belief in consciousness. The Buddha actually said they're considered 5 skandhas. Skandhas are heaps, H-E-A-P-S, heaps. These skandhas, or heaps, are what we experience that then deem to be an ego. The sense of self, the sense of ego is simply is sort of the continuity of a sense of cohesion to the continually shifting, changing flow of the skandhas. The skandhas are form, feeling or sensation, perception, mental formations, which means what's also called volitional formations, thought and emotion, and then consciousness. And the Buddha said, even consciousness is born of ignorance. Even consciousness is born of ignorance because the experience of consciousness is per se dualistic, right? I'm conscious of unity. All that designation, the differentiation of an identity and the perception and the object, which is unity, I'm aware of unity, I am one, all of that is dualistic. There's the I in distinction to you, there's being as opposed to non-being, there's unity as opposed to duality, totally dualistic. And so beyond the belief in separative consciousness is a boundless awareness. And so some teachers, Nityananda, Nisargadatta Maharaj, Indian guys, use the terms awareness in distinction to consciousness, saying that when consciousness is extinguished, then there's infinite awareness. So there's no end of what we are. It's just a refinement of our awareness, or from consciousness to unfettered, non-dual awareness. So that's considered the path, and yes, very much so. Beyond the levels of higher self, there's not much interaction with the human, except the raw material talks about an 8th density level, which are basically like lords of karma or guardians to the 7th density octave, that are assistants to the logos, kind of the helpers of the creator of a 7th density octave, are 8th density beings that, despite being in infinity, can coalesce and make some kind of contribution to guide and manage the 7th dimensional octave.
Now, I wanna. First of all, Scott, it's been a while. Are you okay to go on?
Yeah, sure, I'm okay.
Because I was actually thinking of covering the wanderer topic, but I was wondering, maybe that's a big topic. Maybe we should talk about that in another interview. But I actually wanted to talk about enlightenment, and we see. I wanted to talk about enlightenment and this kind of concept, like, okay, so we're talking about all of this and unity consciousness. So how is it possible that we see people who seem enlightened but still have a body, and how does that relate to the interpenetration of densities?
Well, first of all, in Buddhism there are considered 4 stages of enlightenment. Very few people seem to understand that. The first is called Sotapanna, which is stream entry, and that represents an initial penetration to the nature of reality, which leads to an experience of no self, or the recognition that self is a dream and our true being is non-separate from all that is. That's simply the first level of enlightenment in the Buddhist system. And in that system, only at the level of complete and perfect enlightenment, which is the 4th, is there the complete destruction of ignorance and all the distortions of grasping, aversion, and unknowing, or believing in illusion. So only at the final stage is there no more distortion in the personality, no more blockage in the 2nd and 3rd chakra. Normally that kind of thing is not done in 3rd density anyway. That final transformation is usually done from 6th density. But so a person who's had a first level enlightenment, which actually seems to be more rare than than I imagine. It's actually quite rare.
Mm-hmm.
A person who's had that will still have personal distortions, but they know that self is just a fiction. It's just a concept.
Mm.
And so many, enlightenment is a big deal. And yet there's a difference between initial penetration to the nature of reality, which is a awakening, which is an enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
and the goal, which is called a complete and perfect enlightenment. And so in raw system, they say that this moment of enlightenment is contact with intelligent infinity. And that means that energy has made a consistent and unbroken line with consciousness between root and crown.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the human body, we can experience moments of totality, or we can live there finally, but an enlightenment experience as a discrete experience is a penetration of energy through all chakra levels up to the crown 7. And that leads to, so-called God consciousness or intelligent infinity.
Mm.
Now, that can surely, of course, be done in the human body. And so then there are people who are sotapanna in the human body. In Buddhism, there's also the discussion of enlightenment with remainder, enlightenment without remainder. In that system, the remainder, we're talking about guys who are arhats, 4th level, completely finished. They're not Buddhas, but they're just, they don't have the same responsibilities or historical meaning as a Buddha, but the level of consciousness is infinite. They're basically out of consciousness, and they're in infinite awareness, and they're finished. And their next evolution will basically be in 8th density. Mm-hmm. So for those guys, the Buddha said that's a state, that's considered enlightenment with remainder. The remainder is the human body. Mm. And there still is karma, even though they know the karma is empty. And they have no conflict, resistance, or struggle with the experiencing of karma.
Right.
But surely complete and perfect enlightenment can be known in the body, but there's still the karmic remainder of the body and certain patterns of mind or things that are going to come in from the environment. Without remainder is when that fellow dies, and there's no more human body, and then they basically cannot be located. You can't say what happens to them after death in that state. And the Buddha refuted all views on that and said, it's pointless to speculate. Just get yourself there, and you'll know.
Great answer. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So, what then is the Buddha? What a Buddha?
What's that?
What is a Buddha?
A Buddha is basically a focalization of intelligent infinity. Mm. Is a manifestation of infinity that is intelligent, operating through the energy, matter form of a human body in the 3rd density world. Mm. I mean, I think Buddhas go to higher density planets, but I haven't experienced that recently. So,
right.
So a Buddha is a sun. A Buddha is at the same level of a logos. Logos has meaning from the Greek word called word. The word in Greek for word is logos. So that's a metaphysical term for basically a creator of a 7-dimensional solar system who manifests through the physical sun. But the whole heliosphere of the 7-dimensional octave associated with the solar system is the body, is the manifestation of that great being.
Wow.
And so a Buddha is at the same level as that. So after you become a Buddha, you can become a solar system. Hey.
Nice. Scott, we're just gonna start wrapping it up because I think we've covered a lot of material actually.
Yes.
And actually we've I like to think that we've skimmed the surface of many very important topics, and I'd really like to encourage people, if they're interested in these topics, to go on Scott's website, talkswithscottmandelker.com, and scottmandelker.com as well.
Yeah, let me just present the contact information. So I have an archive site, which is www.scottmandelker.com, which is SCOTTMANDELKER.com. There's a site with a lot of free PDF compilations from Ra and certain major writings that I put into PDF form, as well as Book 3, as well as Book 4 for free in PDF form. And that's not a www, it's an HTTP, talks with scottmandelker.com. And then I have a YouTube channel with 133 or so videos. They're really audio. They're audios from my weekly Skype discussion group that's been going on the last couple of years, talking about the PDF compilations from the Law of One.
Yep.
And it's a very comprehensive study and quite advanced. I also do personal counseling in 1-hour Skype sessions by voice, and there's information on the Talks with Scott Mandelker site, and there's my email address on all of those for contact.
Yeah, and I'll put the links on the description page as well for this YouTube clip. I'm going to make a YouTube clip out of this podcast. Great. So Scott, thank you so much for being with us. Any last things you'd like to mention to our listeners?
No, but I think it might be nice to just read a little quote about the Law of One. So, I don't see where the right page is, but the Law of One is basically saying that our experience of polarity and conflict and duality is the result of limited perception, and that the key to awakening is transformation of perception, so that we see what is, rather than simply see the interpretations based on our distortions or limited awareness, limited perception. And the purpose of human life is the development of all we are, and this is a special time on planet Earth with very particular hardships and opportunities. And the strength of the inner light equals the strength of our seeking that light. And so if you wish to be filled with light, love, light, seek strongly. Seek truth strongly. Love, truth, and all is well. So that's my closing benediction.
Thank you.
So it's a serious matter, and the development of perception is everything.
So Scott, I'd love to have you back for another show, but let's arrange that off air. So this is Scott Mandelker and Ken Bok. Hope you enjoyed this little podcast, and bye for now.